Good afternoon. My name is Xander Gamble, and I'm the Associate Publisher of the Central Penn Business Journal, and welcome to the Do's and Don'ts of Disaster Recovery webinar. This webinar is presented by Paul Davis Restoration and Remodeling and in partnership with the Business Journal. It's great that you're all here to learn more about disaster recovery and preparedness, and I'm confident that you guys will learn quite a bit in the next hour. Before I introduce our speaker, Stephen Rote from Paul Davis, I'd like to go over a few things. With regard to the audio portion of the webinar, you can call in to the provided phone number or you can access the audio through your computer sound system. If you look in the control panel box on the right of your screen and expand the audio segment, there you can select your audio preference. Also in your control panel, you will find a questions section which you can expand and ask questions for the presenter. Stephen will try to address questions as they're received, and for those that he does not, he will do so offline. All attendees are automatically muted, so this is your only area to be heard by asking questions. And again, I encourage you to ask them throughout the webinar. Also want to let you guys know that we currently have almost 170 attendees on board for this webinar, and it is indeed a record for us here at the Business Journal. So thanks again for being here. And lastly, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but today is the Ides of March, the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated, and this week is National Flood Safety Awareness Week. So we have quite the good timing here. Without further ado, I will now introduce Stephen and we'll get started. Stephen Rote is President and CEO of Paul Davis Restoration and Remodeling based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Stephen bought into the Paul Davis Restoration franchise system and started his Lancaster operations in 2000. He has grown his business at a double-digit rate every year, and it has become the largest restoration company in central Pennsylvania. Its capabilities include large loss drying, hard and soft contents, document restoration, electronics, full construction services, and his staff is commercially certified. Stephen's business often supports other Paul Davis offices across the country, as well as other regional restoration companies who do not have the services that he provides. Stephen has recently expanded into South Jersey with offices in the Atlantic City area. Thanks again for coming, and I turn over to you, Stephen.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Xander. Welcome. As suggested, my name is Stephen Rote, President and CEO of the locally owned Paul Davis Restoration. Over the years, I've been asked to help companies start a business continuity program of some sorts. This can be a daunting experience, and the one that appears to be too big to address. With the help of Central Penn Business Journal, we hope to give you some tools to get the process started. In the past, we provided books, resources, and distributed to our customers. Today, we're venturing into a new media. The venue allows the audience to ask questions, add examples to deepen learning. And as you write the questions, my staff and I, we're going to do what we can to answer them. So we'll get to as many as possible throughout the hour. And like Xander has suggested, I'll have my email posted at the end. So please send any questions that you possibly can. So unless there's anything else, let's get started. This is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. We'll go through a little bit of an introduction. We'll talk about the phases of business continuity and some resources there. What you can expect or you should ask for in a full service provider, what some of the capabilities could be. I have some first steps. First steps in that what are critical items, what I've seen through my experience in helping customers in various industries versus schools, institutional, manufacturing, and really a clear understanding that this isn't a destination. It truly is a journey. I'll show you some examples of the good, the bad, the ugly, and then we'll end up with companies, some resources for you, some companies, groups, websites, things that can help you along the way. The best intentions. I kind of use this slide to really make a point. During or really for preparation for Hurricane Rita, I'm sure somewhere in Texas A&M, their emergency preparedness plan, it says to place plywood over large glass openings. Unfortunately, training, expectations, practice were not properly set. I'm confident that the work done was by well-intended people. However, plywood was put on the wrong side of the glass. During the recent weather, we had Lee and Irene come up here through October through central Pennsylvania and New Jersey. How many well-intended people, organizations did you see trying to help? They really wanted to do the right thing. But it's a little risky to count on good Samaritans to do the right thing for you. Here's the good news. We're not alone. According to the recent MasterCard survey, 84% of business owners are not worried about a disaster in the next 12 months. Fortunately, most of them will be right. Unfortunately, which ones are wrong? And by this survey, understand that 27 million businesses across the United States qualify in the category of small business. So if you do the math, that's 21.6 million businesses don't think anything's going to happen this year. Admittedly, 77% say they're not prepared. Again, doing the math, that's 20 million businesses. This includes some very basic things. Data backup, general information to run your business, contact information for emergencies, backup inventory, things that you necessarily need to run your business, and they're very basic or are not ready. Also, there's a perception of most business owners that I know that we can handle the building damage, which is maybe true. But insurance companies know that business interruption far exceeds the cost and the damage of the physical plant. Not being able to utilize the process impacts much more than convenience. Your efficiencies, your delivery time, such as schools, for example. If they can't get so much time, of classroom time in front of the student, do they lose their federal or state accreditation? Do they lose their funding? What's compromised by not being able to do the process? Here's a picture from the Midwest. Of the 77% or the 21 million small business executives out there, what do you think goes through their mind when they look out their window and see this? Knowing your situation, and you saw this, what goes through your mind? In Katrina, this is a photograph, I should say, after Katrina. Not only did we have to deal with the individual businesses and their concerns, we had to address items like no access to streets. We had to ship in our own food for our employees that did the job. We were shipping in cots, had to build sleeping quarters in parking garages. Health and safety issues, this is all considered a hazardous water. Limited communications. Some of the communications in that area, literally cell phones, were so overtaxed, cell phone services were so overtaxed that you could only make a call for 45 seconds to a minute before you were cut off. And then on top of mass hysteria. If your business survived a natural disaster in the area, is there a threat nearby that could impact it? You know, for instance, your town is built below sea level and a levee fails because a barge ran into it. Is there a nuclear plant? Central Pennsylvania, there's several nuclear plants around us. Is there a train or rail system that could pose a toxic threat? Generally, you know what's going on around you and what could prevent you from doing business. Could it happen here? It's a photograph. This is a photograph of a doctor's office. I will tell you that this happened a little over a year ago. I remember it was on a Sunday clearly because it happened 10 minutes before kickoff when the Eagles were in the playoff game. That's when I got the phone call. And consequently, so did my staff. It was a sprinkler main that broke on the second floor. And what we had to deal with was the physical damage, which was important. However, multiple doctors work in this office. They had patients scheduled for Monday, happened to be a pediatrician's office. We had to deal with relocating them, providing the medical files, as well as drying them, and dealing with HIPAA requirements. This organization had a limited plan, a limited business continuity plan, and it really allowed them to lose very little what I call production time or servicing their customer. They were really back in business by midday on Monday, happened to be in our location, and we were able to move the business forward of dealing with their documentation, customer information, as well as the doctor's appointments. Different picture, same building, just after the fire departments left, turning off the sprinklers, and we were beginning to get started. But I share this picture with you to pose a thought. What could you do in your best practices in your day-to-day operation? For example, all files get put away daily. Nothing is left on the floor. Are all electronics powered down when not in use? Those simple items, those simple tasks or best practices mean a lot when we're trying to recover data, recover files, get the business up and running in a new location. Again, same picture. Again, snow on the ground, which didn't happen this year because we didn't get much snow in central Pennsylvania. But this was last year. And this is just a picture of the drying equipment that was required to get the building back in operation. And really, we were able to work inside using this type of equipment. I show this picture, coffee. It doesn't look like a very damaged facility. However, this is a place of worship. Happens to be a 16,000 square foot area for their services, their Sunday services. The coffee pot, which was a bun-style coffee pot, was left on a warmer overnight, caught fire. There was a flat-screen TV hanging above it that caught fire, consequently caught fire. It filled the building with black, smelly soot. It was a film over everything. They could not hold services in this location the next day. Not much of a contingency plan in this location. We kind of did what we had to do. They missed services that day, next day, excuse me. And we dealt with it and had them back in operation the following week. And you could see we had some heavy equipment in there to make this happen. Fortunately, they had an alliance with us. I share this with you to, again, make you think a little bit about, here's a worship center that missed a day where this company usually deals with collection of donations, people showing up, and that day was missed. How did that impact the overall process of the business? There were a lot of volunteers who really wanted to help in this, and they did a nice job, but there were some things they just couldn't do, and it needed to be trained personnel to help make that happen. Different photograph. This organization did have a business continuity plan, or the beginnings of it. This happens to be a new truck dealership. This truck was delivered, brought inside a building. That night, or the next day, it was going to be ready for pickup by the customer, and it caught fire. It caught fire, turning the whole inside of this building black. You can see the damage that it did to the tools, excuse me, the tools and the facility, and it took out the security system. It took out the parts department. It took out several items. This is a photograph of the roof that right above the vehicle. The business owner had a contingency plan in place where he had another location approximately an hour and a half away. He relocated his customers. He compensated for the distance and travel. We took care of emergency parts that were in this building to be cleaned, restored, tested, etc. The mechanics found a new place to work, and between 45 and 60 days, we were able to restore this and get this back in action, this business back in business. The use of the contingency plan was very good, and it gave us some guidelines and things that we could move on. And finally, this picture is a picture of obviously a pipe that has broken under concrete. I share this with you that this was something that was, I would say, unavoidable by the customer. However, it did do substantial damage to a research facility. They did not have a place to go. They did not have a contingency plan. We did what we needed to do to get them back and organized, but it was very painful and concerning for the management and ownership of the organization, as well as lost revenue. But they are back in business. So I share those with you to say, start with a checklist. We all need some place to start. Begin with a simple list. It will grow. It will change. It's designed to. However, we need a trail or at least some avenue of things that we've done so we can progress along the way. If you're wondering why I chose this picture here, here's an airplane that is landing without its landing gear. The phases of business continuity planning. The first phase is really the risk analysis. What does that mean? Take a look at your environment. What's in and around your building? What do you have inside your building from an environmental standpoint? I just gave you an example of the trucks. You have to park your vehicles inside. Yeah, maybe chemicals for the process, sprinkler systems, water mains, etc. And also observe what's around you. I use this section as what I call a brainstorming section, where really there's no bad answer. Everything gets put down. What are potential risks in your environment? What are your potential risks as far as technology? That means your IT. What's going on there? How dependent is your IT department on your organization? Do you communicate with all your customers via some type of electronic communication? Are you dispatching, if you're a service industry, are you dispatching your people electronically? If it's manufacturing, does your process are your processes controlled electronically through maybe program logic controllers or PLCs? What's the risk of things going down? Your facilities. What conditions are your facilities in? Where are they located? It's sometimes comical, but often very true, where employees will say, well, every time it rains, we have this issue. Or when it snows, don't go out the back door because the snow is going to blow off on you. Things of that nature. Mold. What is your facilities doing that you can help prevent or address? Insurances. What insurances do you think you need? What insurances that you may or may not have? It's a review of what you have and basically an observation of what's going on or the risks in your facility. I put this questionnaire here in that Millersville University has a disaster research center, actually a master's program in disaster recovery. You can go to their website. They have questionnaires and things to help get you started. I also put business partners in red. That's something that is available to you as well. There are many partners out there that are willing at limited charge or no charge, who are experts in this industry or this area, to help get you started, identify the risks, and move forward. I know this isn't coming off clear because I condensed it for the presentation, but I did put our website along the side. If you go to our web page and go to resources, you'll see this. But what this is a business continuity checklist. We publish this for our customers. We've also published this through the business continuity insert that was published by the Business Journal last year to help everybody get started. Again, it's a checklist, and as example number one is develop a business continuity disaster recovery plan. And underneath that, it says establish a disaster recovery team of employees who know your business the best and assign responsibilities. Identify your risks, kinds of disasters you're most likely to experience, and those are things we just talked about. Prioritize critical business functions. How quickly must these be recovered? We're going to talk about that in a second. I'll jump over to number 6, communication. Do you have access to multiple reliable methods of communication with your employees? Do they have an emergency toll-free hotline, website, cell phones, pagers, two-way radios? Gives you some lists, things to kind of think about. Number 10, cash management. Be prepared to meet emergency cash flow needs. You know, your checkbook, where's that? Credit cards. Are you able to pay in cash? Do your vendors require payment a certain day before they stop paying or stop supplying you? Or things to think about, and this checklist is a resource for you to help get you through the process or get you started. The second phase of business continuity is the building impact. And I like this photograph. I like this photograph because those with Navy experience and in the right conditions, aircraft carrier, they'll push off equipment. What impact does that have when a $12 million asset goes into the ocean? But the building impact, you just spend some time doing a risk analysis and seeing everything that's out there. What processes have been documented? And did you document all the risk analysis that you have? What could be shared with others? Analyze the threats. This is how come I refer back to the risk analysis as a kind of brainstorming. What we're looking at here is taking all of those risks and find out what the threats are, rank them in priority, and what needs that we have that can impact the business. Identify key personnel or positions. So there are people in every organization that either hold a key position or the person themselves are extremely valuable in an emergency situation. They know where everything is. They know how to deal with everything. Recovery time objectives. This is critical. We had a couple of scenarios that I'd like to share with you that kind of put this really into perspective. It wasn't long ago that we did a job for a bakery. Actually, this bakery did Portuguese rolls. They had 5 production lines, and the center production line caught fire. The president, his name was actually Steve also, came to me and said, Steve, you got 7 days to get this building back up in operation. And at that point in time, the Department of Health had shut it down. So we had 7 days to clean the entire place. And the Department of Health said to us, they don't know the difference between dust, soot, or flour. So the entire place had to be cleaned, which is about a 90,000 square foot facility with a 34-foot ceiling. That information from the president was critical. Normally, we may have put together a plan that we put in 30 people in that building for 2 or 3 weeks. But knowing that if he didn't recover in 7 days, that he was going to go out of business. His customers loved him, but they can't go without rolls for a period of time. They would find their rolls somewhere else, and he could never recover. So we adjusted our plan to get him back in business in 6 days, in which we did. There's another scenario that's being developed there with a local school. This recently happened. They were closed for a mold issue, and the superintendent came to us and said, this has to be done between Christmas and New Year's. They couldn't afford to take 1 extra day or 2 extra days of the building being closed. So through the holidays, we had to work with the extended staff through multiple shifts to get it done. Because the recovery time objective was that if they lost any school days, it would impact the teachers' union, it would impact the start and the stop of the school year, and it could impact their funding for the upcoming year. So recovery objectives are huge, and it's very important to understand that right up front. After you decide what the risks are, and you also decide what the impact on business is, now we're at the plan development. Everything, again, is documented. This is a trail of documentation of what you found and how it's being developed. Draft preliminary procedures. The team that you put together is going to put some procedures together to deal with the worst case scenario or the most likely scenario first, and come up with procedures and policies to minimize the impact. Establish an emergency management team. The team may or may not be the same as the business continuity team. These may be key personnel, executives in the business, that are notified, have responsibilities, and really help drive in the time of an emergency. Review the plan with the team. The team needs to be aware of who's in charge of what, how, when, etc. I have to tell you that we did a recent job where communication and team was critical. It was during the recent floods, school, underwater, first floor underwater. We show up on the first day. We work with the janitorial staff or the custodial staff. Everybody was working well together, and then the management of the custodial staff showed up. Different objectives. The plan changed. Then the superintendent showed up, also well-intended, but the plan changed. And then the business manager showed up day 2. Things changed. It took us about 36 hours to really identify the management team, how we were going to communicate, what the responsibilities were, and the plan. Although we were moving forward and not wasting time. Once we got that communication link and the plan in place, things went a lot smoother, much more effective, and everybody was able to react and adjust accordingly. Establish partnerships as required. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a minute. However, this task of developing a team and developing all the contingency plans accordingly is like eating an elephant. It's very difficult to do it in one bite. So develop partnerships along the way. Whether you feel you're most vulnerable with security of a building because of a terroristic threat, or you need some other type of resource, there are security companies that can partner with you, come alongside you at minimal cost or no cost to help fill that gap so you can react accordingly. And those partnerships will help speed the process along, and then as you develop as an organization, as your plan develops, you can then, do what's better in your organization for your organization. Finalize the plan. I put deceiving here because the plan really is never finalized. As your business changes, as your employees change, as the market changes, so does your business continuity plan and the importance of how it goes. So the plan is finalized for the sake of it's not in a developmental stage anymore. But don't fall into the trap that you finish the plan, it goes into a binder and sits up on the shelf. Phase 4 of the business continuity is training and testing. Now that you have a plan, we need to design a training agenda. And that means training, not only a one-time training, but ongoing training for management, people on the emergency team, hourly staff, maybe even some vendors who access your building or are very close to your organization. There needs to be a training agenda and plan set up for them. Assign accountability for implementation. Who's responsible for developing or implementing the plan? Who's going to be accountable for it? We need somebody. Everybody has a full-time job, but how can we make somebody accountable for making this thing move forward and not get distracted by the day of the business, the activities of the business? Find assistance. Again, I'll go back to there are people out there that can help. Find assistance that can help support you and your organization. Again, everybody has full-time jobs, and there's no one sitting around with nothing to do. But this is important for the longevity of an organization, and how can you find help to move it forward? After you have training in place, after you know the plan, how do we design a testing procedures that the plan works? How do we know, or let's come up with a way that we can actually test what we said should work in a critical situation? I talked about partners, and I think you should visit your partners. I'm going to take this moment. This is obviously a picture of our building, but I have pretty clearly here, visit your partners. I've been asked over the years, what do restoration companies do? What do people in your industry do? And they assume we deal mostly with the facility, or as we call it, the sticks and bricks. But that's only a limited part of what we have going on. So I'm going to share with you from a restoration industry what you should look for in a partner and what you should ask that your partner be able to provide or provide resources for, because there are many people out there that can provide this through either internal or relationship resources to get this done. This is a photograph of the inside of our facility. Basically, this photograph is demonstrating that company in the restoration industry should be able to handle hard and soft contents, which basically means upholstery, as you see, furniture, everything that's in and about an office, electronically inventory, stored in a safe climate-controlled condition. We know everything is neat and organized and protected as it's being processed. So a resource for you needs to be somebody that can provide this type of service. I have the photograph of the bear, and I put the photograph there to give you really an example of, don't just think of the furniture, don't just think of the typical staples of what's in an organization. This is a photograph of actually happens to be the largest Kodiak bear ever shot in Alaska. Stands about 9 feet, 8 inches tall. It was in a fire and needed to be cleaned and restored. Restoration resources should be able to provide you with high technology, latest technology in cleaning. This is a photograph of an ultrasonic cleaning system process. Many of you may have known this through going to a jeweler and you bring your jewelry to it. Well, this is that machine on steroids. Yes, we do clean jewelry in it, but we clean anything that can get wet. An electric fan can get wet with the right solution in it, obviously when it's not plugged in, but we can clean it, and we do clean our own equipment in these machines. We clean dishes, things with intricate patterns, things that may have contamination inside and out, statues. Various items go in this machine, get rinsed off and dried. We have laundry or textile services. I show this picture of this machine specifically designed for the restoration industry, was designed for sporting goods, actually, hockey gear. But I share this with you because this machine was designed now to take out and deal with smoke and odor in textiles, which is drapes, band uniforms, etc. It can do 165 pounds at a time. But also, it can address items that have been dipped in raw sewage, as an example, and they come out as machine food-grade sanitary. I put a photograph there of some hockey pads, goalie pads. I put it there to give you an example that not only do you think of clothing, but think of items. It could be cushions for furniture that can go into the machine, get cleaned, and restored. A machine like that takes some heavy-duty drying. This just happens to be a photograph of the drying equipment that's there along with the washing machine. Again, a restoration resource for you, restoration partner, should have some resources regarding electronic restoration. We happen to have it on site, but there are people that do it through sub-vendors, if you will. What this means is computers, workstations, TVs, monitors, instruments in the facility should be able to be taken apart, repaired, serviced, cleaned, restored, and returned to you. Why is that important as far as business continuity? We recently did a job, again, I'll go back to the floods, where a school went underwater. The school dealt with children with a hearing disorder. They had headphones that they wore to listen to the teacher. In the flood, the series of headphones were damaged, inoperable. We brought them back on a Monday, worked on them throughout the night, dried, repaired, restored them, and brought them back on Tuesday. The students were able to use them on Tuesday and get back in class. They could have been replaced, no question. However, the replacement shipping on that was projected about 3 weeks. So what will we do with those students for 3 weeks? Would that impact their education process? Would that impact accreditation for the school? At this point, we don't know. But that's the type of reaction time that was needed. That was the recovery objective set forth that was able to provide it through a partner, if you will, with the school. Along with this, we did get a question here. Apologize. We did get a question that through our audience said, "What about papers? What about documentation?" I did not show I did not show a picture of document or paper drying. However, there are processes that we employ, and we do it through either a sub-relationship or in-house, depending on the criticalness, that's a word, criticalness of the document. If they need to be freeze-dried, they can be freeze-dried, restored to almost new. And we recently did that with a book that was printed in the 1800s and returned to the Lancaster Library. Or if things don't need to be in original state, they can be reproduced. They can be dried, reproduced, so they're functional and not look like they've been wet and dried. So thank you for that question. Your vendor, your partner should be able to provide storage as your process is being recovered. This happens to be how we store items that fit into boxes. We use a electronic system for inventory. All the items are cataloged and put into a box. Each box has a number. Boxes are put into a vault, as I call it, and the vaults, obviously, you can see are numbered. This gives us the ability to safely store and control the environment in which we're holding people's contents, whether it be a residence or a house, a residence or a business. Just a photograph, we have about 130 of these pods in our facility, climate controlled, security cameras, and obviously under locked doors. And for your information, I can put a typical home, 2,000, 3,000 square foot home, into about 6 of these boxes. Your partner should have resources for drying. If you look back by the van, you'll see some silver boxes back there. They're about half the size of a small refrigerator. Those are dehumidifiers, and they're typically designed, it's based on cubic footage, but to give you a reference, they typically are designed to dry about a 1,500 square foot area. What you see, the machine you see in front of you is a desiccant, trailer mount desiccant. This thing produces about 11,000 CFM, cubic feet per minute of air, at very low humidity, 2% relative humidity, and high temperature. We use this we use this in facilities in excess of 50,000 square feet. Again, conditions require, but your partner should be able to either have these accessible to you at a very short notice or have resources to get it. I show a picture of our conference room, not that your partner needs to have a conference room. However, I do think it's important that as you develop long-term relationships with people, and that's what this is, it's important to know what they do, what they're really like, what's their core values. And the hardware on the wall really is mostly community service awards. And I like to share, you get to know the people that are really going to be in your business. Who are you going to kind of team yourself up with? And finally, your vendor should figure out or offer solutions to make it easy for you to recover quickly. This happens to be our design center. This is not like the big box stores. We don't have thousands of square feet. However, there are solutions that solve 80% of residential and commercial issues, from ceiling tile selections to carpet selections, flooring, wall covering, paint, etc. Everything can be addressed very quickly, and that's what the system is designed for, and that's what I'm proposing look for in a partner. Training. And looking at a partner, can they help you get better? Are they filling a gap, or can they help you get better? This photograph happens to be of our training facility here in Lancaster. It was a Facility Manager Association meeting. We're actually having a board meeting regarding business continuity. I happen to be on the panel. And we're talking about and providing a free service on how to help people grow in this area. Our organization also provides areas of training for safety, health management, etc. So in picking a partner, what other services can they offer for free to make this happen? I'll go through this quickly. But these are the different divisions that you just recently saw through the photographs. And these are, and put this up here so you could make notes, that when in searching of a restoration vendor or a vendor to partner with, these areas should be provided whether they're in-house or through their partnerships and their resources within the organization. You know, whether it's emergency services from fires, floods, mold, the I need help call, through contents, electronic restoration, textiles and laundry, construction for the insurance company, for the insurance loss, commercial construction outside of the loss. Maybe there's other things going on. We happen to have an interiors division, a commercial interiors division, and training. So from my experience, I just want to share with you some of the first steps. Make a commitment. Commit to a leader. Who's going to be the champion in your organization for this business continuity program? Somebody needs to be volunteered, and somebody needs to really want to be able to do it. Commit to open and honest conversation. The conversation needs to be held in a safe room where it can't hurt people's feelings. What are we really at risk for? What really could impact our business that could impact our longevity? Commit to the most likely threats. There are threats all around us. What's the most likely? Where are we most vulnerable? And put them in a priority order and address them accordingly. The communication chain, I can't emphasize that enough. I spoke about it earlier. Who's in charge? What are they responsible for? And who gets communicated to on a daily basis? And what form is that in? Telephone calls, personal visits, emails, etc. Identify the safety nets. Identify the partners. Who can help you now? This is a big project. This can be a big project. Who can help you now to fill the gaps and let you develop over time? And then visit those partners. Make sure that what they said they can do, they can actually do it, and you're comfortable moving alongside of them or them having them alongside you. From a industry standards, here are some things that's suggested. You know, maintain proper insurance, and make sure all policies cover all types of disasters. When Lee and Irene came in October, we had 1,100 phone calls over a 72-hour period. Unfortunately, the vast majority of those people did not understand what insurance policies they had. They were not properly covered for flood, and it became a real problem. And many of those that were covered with very low limits. So understand what your insurance policies cover, and that you are covered accordingly. Understand the difference between replacement value and actual cash value. In general terms, for educational purposes only, replacement value is typically more expensive than actual cash value program. Replacement value is an example. If you spent $3,000 5 years ago on a plasma TV and something happened, an event happened, it went away, you'd replace it and get a new one, and that's fine. With the actual cash value, if you spent $3,000 5 years ago for the TV, and before the event it was really only worth $500, that may be all you're entitled to. It's less expensive over time, and there's pros and cons to each. But understand the difference, because this is a big point that people struggle with. Minimize your risk, and I talked about this earlier. Water pooling, fire, theft. You know, again, some companies will say, yeah, every time it rains, we get this big puddle of water in our warehouse. You know, it's on the roof, it's outside the building, causing damage. What risk does that pose? Having vehicles inside a building, a fire, theft, safety, hazardous materials in your building. They may be required, but where are they? Or how can we address them? When you're building or refurbishing, meet or exceed codes. You know, in the building industry, you know, sometimes we view codes as being very difficult to meet, or not making sure we need to meet them. In a commercial environment, building inspectors, there's no tolerating anything but meeting code. I understand that. In the residential marketplace, there's even a trend right now going on that says we should exceed codes. Codes are really there to minimize damage, to improve safety. And the minimum is just that, the minimum. How do we exceed those? And that should be under consideration. Backup records daily, repeatedly, off-site. The cloud is becoming more and more popular, easier to use. Backup power source. We have a backup power source here in our facility. Find a solution in your facility. Unfortunately, fortunately, I didn't need that here. During the recent storms where we lost a lot of power, we were okay as a business. But I used it at my house. And I was the only house in the neighborhood that had power. I had people running extension cords to my house. But the power source was a great convenience, and it allowed us to live. Many people didn't have power for 7 days. Lines of communication, accountability tree. Again, we talked about that. Make sure you have fast access to funding. Cash. Cash, paying your vendors. Again, it's not just you having cash to pay your vendors, but sometimes your vendors may not be in a position because they're not as good a shape as you are. So you may have a disaster on a Thursday and pay your vendors on a Friday. They may not be able to survive the following week without it. So having cash, and if they can't provide their service to you, that may impact your business. Pentagon-style emergency plans. I put that up there because the Pentagon obviously is a military installation, but their plans were their plans. They saved hundreds of lives because they practice it regularly. People know where to go, what to do, who was in charge. There was no personalities involved, and it was a routine. And it did set the pace for emergency preparedness plans. And no exit routes for people needing the building. I have a question coming in here. Says, so when you have a disaster, who gets the first call? Restoration company, insurance company? How do you know what will be paid if the insurance is not contacted first? Don't most people need an education on their insurance first? Good question. Good question. When a loss comes in, and we run about 1,300 to 1,400 jobs a year. I'll tell you that when the loss comes in, a new claim comes in, under most policies, the policyholder is required to do everything possible to mitigate or lessen the damage, to deal with it. So yes, there is a concern of what's covered on a large-scale process, absolutely. And on my next slide, I'll share with you what happens after the disaster. However, most people, most scenarios are covered unless we start talking about floodwater. Floodwater seems to throw a wrench into many scenarios. So after the disaster, I put a couple of stars against some highlighted areas. Communication. So you had a problem in your facility or in around your facility. How are we going to communicate to people? And we need multiple options. Your employees need to get back to work. One is they need to get back to get paid. That's important to them. But also, no one knows your business better than your employees. They need to get back for your sake as well, or for the company's sake. They may not want to. They may be traumatized. They may have personal issues. But there's a need, a way to get them back to rebuild the business and keep this thing going. So communication is critical. Account for all personnel. And I'll go back to the recent disasters. People were spread all over Pennsylvania because of the floods. You take Katrina and New Orleans, people were spread through all over the country for a long period of time. Getting those people back into their business was very difficult. Record the details of losses, photos, etc. It really is your responsibility to identify what the issues are, to identify what you've done, what the problems are, what the descriptions were, etc. Recognize when you need help. I put a giant star next to this. As a commercial facility that may have internal staff, you all have people that if you spill a glass of water, they may be calling the fire company. You all have other guys that there could be water coming out the second floor and they're standing there with a shop vac saying, I got this, boss. Recognize and train your people what their guidelines are. Recognize when you need help. Let them do what they're good at and call in others to do what they're good at to keep the business up and running. Use resources effectively. Obviously, notify insurance company immediately. That'll solve the problem that we were just talking about on is it covered, is it not. Set up an emergency funding. Again, we talked about that. Mitigate ongoing damage wherever possible. It is your responsibility to minimize damage. Secure the site and structure for safety and crime. Number one priority is safety. You want to protect your employees. You want to protect the people in and about your building. But there are some unscrupulous people out there that take advantage of disasters. So we also want to prevent crime as well. So unfortunately, when a disaster strikes, there is a major emphasis on locking down a facility, locking down a general area to prevent safety issues and or prevent crime. And identify priorities to return to meeting a customer's needs. I showed you a picture of our conference room. We use our conference room often. We use our facility very often, a design center. However, if a disaster were to happen in our building, from a priority standpoint, that would be the last thing done. Number one is what do we need to do to address the customer's needs? And I think by looking at it that way, in terms of after the disaster, you can identify priorities, solutions, things can happen in a sequential manner, and be able to get you back in business, or at least partially back in business sooner than later. It's important to understand that after a disaster, those without a plan, that the number is staggering that do not open the doors. I've looked at various numbers, and it jumps all over the place, but it's safe to say that people without a plan that a disaster happens to or an event happens within their facility, about 50% never reopen because they can't prioritize or they don't have the resources to meet their timing objectives. I was reading a question, excuse me. I put this slide up for a little bit of resources. The Association of Contingency Planners, Ginny Stauffer happens to be leading that organization, who's a friend of our organization as well. It is an international organization of contingency planners. The website's listed. Please go on. There's a variety of resources available to you to help guide you in starting this contingency plan. The Business Industry Subcommittee, or the Pennsylvania Task Force, readyforbusiness.org, is also another very valuable website that's available to you. Resources online to make it happen. I briefly talked about the Millersville University Disaster Research, and they have their master's program for this. Again, the Millersville website provides you solutions, guidelines, as well as resources to help provide you through this process. The Lancaster Chamber. I know many of you are not in Lancaster, and I'm sure your chamber may have some resources as well. But I do know that the Lancaster Chamber has resources there for business continuity, our business contingency planning, and I put their website out. So check your local chamber for resources. The Central Penn Business Journal obviously still has posted our checklist and some various resources, and obviously they're providing services and seminars like we have right now. This is our website that can go to resources. Design Data is one of our business continuity partners. They are an IT firm that can help identify solutions. They provide services to identify your risk analysis. And you can go to their website, listed. Trout, Ebersol, and Groff, or TEG as I call them, they are an accounting firm, but they have an entire division dedicated to what I call global business continuity or business contingency planning. They have certified advisors, certified counselors that can help move this through the 4 steps and take it from an immediate need or to a global aspect and be a long-term commitment from it. If you're having trouble on your checklist, seeing the checklist on our website, shoot me an email or a call, no problem. I'll get to you whatever information I can. I always like to kind of bring in a presentation our core values because, again, this is what I truly consider a partnership that is not just a play on words. You should know who you're aligned with. These are the core values that I share with my employees, that my employees know, and really we work towards. Respectful of your needs, courteous, always trying to provide customer service, and being honest and thorough. So that's it. I'm going to go back a second here and put the resources up here for your knowledge. I did get a couple of questions. And let me see where we are. Question came through, are we providing the PowerPoint after the webinar? Sure. We'll post it on our website. Give me till tomorrow to get it posted on our website. Honestly, I didn't think about it, so give me a couple hours to make that happen. Another question is, what is the most common error you have seen in the business continuity plan over the past year, especially in the floodings? What should have been done differently, if anything? I won't say that there was a common error. I think one of the things that people missed, if you will, was knowing what their insurance is covered was very important. There were surprises, especially from a business standpoint. I'm going to separate this out from business and personal, but businesses really weren't sure what was covered, what wasn't covered. And the other plan was they really had no idea who was going to be responsible and what resources they had. And what I mean by that is whether a management team thought the facilities guys had everything under control, the facilities team thought that the management may have had a relationship with a vendor, a supplier. And in the case of recent storms, not only were businesses affected, but businesses like electricians, plumbers, roofing companies, their businesses were affected, their resources were affected, their supply chain was affected, as well as there were so many people that needed help that they couldn't get to everybody. So the supply side of vendors was tied up. What is the comparison between replacement cost and restoration cost of contents? If I understand that question correctly, typically an insurance program, an insurance policy will have a limit on contents replacement value. And what that basically means is there may be a $30,000 contents coverage. You can spend that to replace the contents, or you can spend it to restore it. What companies like ourselves will do, we'll give a price of, it's going to be, $50, $100, $500 to repair this product. It may be worth buying a new one. It may be worth, cleaning it, restoring it. But it's worth the conversation to better utilize the cost or utilize your limits. I'm reading another question that says, in the event of a flood or fire and restoration services are needed, are the services billed directly or through the insurance company? Yes. What I mean by that is officially the agreement, the contract is between the policyholder and the restoration contractor or a general contractor in whatever case is necessary. However, many cases, the insurance company adjuster, whoever is responsible for the claim, will deal directly with the contractor and come up with a price of what the value of the restoration is going to be. And obviously the policyholder, is aware of the conversation, approves the values, and actually, more importantly, approves the scope of work, so we all know exactly what's going to get done and what is covered by their policy. How do public adjusters fit into the mix? Public adjusters, there are basically three types of adjusters. You have adjusters that work for insurance companies, and they may be, well, they are employed and get their salary from an insurance company, and they represent the interest of the insurance companies and really trying to settle the claim. There are independent adjusters that are just that. They work for multiple insurance companies. They deal sometimes in catastrophes. They deal with some unique situations, or when an insurance company has a large volume that their current staff cannot handle, they go to independents. But they still are getting compensated to settle the claim and kind of deal with the issue. Public adjusters are organizations that were intended to deal specifically with or to represent the policyholder in general. They review policy, they have the ability to review policy, and they are clearly intended and get paid for, or their compensation is paid for by the policyholder. So they fit into the mix as an advocate of the policyholder, and that's how they fit. In Central Pennsylvania and even into Jersey, I see them not as often as an independent or obviously a company adjuster. Last question. Do you have offices in New Jersey expanding there? Let me kind of read. I'm sorry, I got to put my glasses on to read this. Do you have any offices in New Jersey and are expanding there? Yes. Yes, we do have offices. And as we did during the introduction, Paul Davis is the franchise. There's about 300 offices across the country and cover every major metropolitan area. My specific office covers Central Pennsylvania. We do have 2 offices in the South Jersey area, and we have a facility in Atlantic City. But there are offices, Paul Davis offices, that have the same strategy, philosophies that I do, and as well as we support throughout the state of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and again through all the 50 states.
Great. Great job.
Thank you,
Steve. Really appreciate it. We're just over an hour, and people are signing off now, so I think we're about ready to stop. Just want to thank you so much for all that great information, and also thanks to all our attendees for participating. If Stephen was unable to answer some of your questions, I do have those noted, so he will reply offline and get back to you. But I would like to say thanks again for coming. This officially concludes the webinar, and everybody have a great afternoon. Thanks again.